Welcome to this section all about typography. This will be a series of lessons all about what typography is and the rules to use to make your designs better. Typography is the art or way of arranging type on a page to either be printed or digitally displayed. Typography is a vital part of any design as it helps to communicate a concept that the viewers need to read and understand. In any composition, some type will be able to use a less legible font than others. For example, the headline can be with a more playful font because the communication will be shorter and bigger, as opposed to the main part of the design, which will require the reader to read much more and therefore needs to be an easier to read font. Your job as a designer is to attract the right viewer and make something more interesting to read. If the client just wanted something created in Microsoft Word, they could have done it themselves. You need to make sure you know all the elements of typography so you can make your designs better. And that is what we will be going over in this whole typography section. You probably know the term font, and it's often used to refer to which type you're using. However, the correct name for this is typeface, which is the overall name of a family of fonts. For example, Montserrat is a typeface, and then the correct definition of font is the style and size of a typeface used. For example, regular, italic, or bold. So you can see the typeface is Montserrat, and some of the fonts in that typeface are Montserrat Regular, Montserrat Italic, and Montserrat Bold. There are 4 categories typefaces fall into. Serif, which indicates the embellishments or projections at the end of each letter to help lead the eye to the next letter. You will find these used often in books as they are easier on the eye of the reader. Serifs were created as far back as the 1500s by designer Claude Garamond. Sans serifs are those without serifs, because sans means without. The sans serif typefaces were created way later in 1800 by William Caslon Jr., so they're associated with being more modern or simplistic. Script typefaces are the oldest and are based off the original printed book with type that was supposed to emulate handwriting in the Gutenberg Bible created around 1440 when the first printing press was created. Fancy typefaces, sometimes called display typefaces, first showed up in the late 1800s. But were continued to be used throughout the 1900s into the 2000s as decorative fonts on posters and ads. These ones are more fun or funky, and they should not be used for large bodies of type as they're quite hard to read, but they can do well to evoke specific emotions for short amounts of text. The 2 most used categories are serif and sans serif. A quick history lesson which will be helpful for you in understanding typography better. You may hear the term type foundry in the design world. A foundry is a workshop or factory for casting metal, or in other words, it's creating an object out of metal using a mold and hot molten metal. This originates from the first type foundry back in the 1400s when the first printing press was created. So in this case, a type foundry was a factory that would create actual type blocks that would then be set on a printing press to form letters, words, and paragraphs that were then printed onto a sheet of paper. In the digital world, these foundries are companies that design and sell or distribute typefaces for use by designers in their designs, such as this example of Adobe Fonts, which is a collection of typefaces to choose from, or myfonts.com. Some designers will create their own typefaces, but that's a whole other skill and art form in itself that we're not going to be covering here. Most graphic designers use pre-created typefaces that they get from type foundries for their design work. As mentioned, serif is easier to read in books and large bodies of type. However, for digital designs, such as websites, you will see sans serif fonts used much more often. This is because the serifs tend to be more pixelated in digital format and lose that same clarity you would find in a book. 70% of type on the web is using sans serif. That doesn't mean you can't use serif in digital or sans serif in printed, but these are guidelines and rules to think with when you're designing. You can see serif and sans serifs used often together to contrast and complement each other, such as serif headlines with sans serif type. or sans serif headlines and subheadlines used with serif type in this magazine. Note that when you use serif typefaces, the design will feel more classical or traditional, whereas sans serif will give it a more modern feel. When working with italics, serif fonts have a much more distinct difference from their original non-italic version, whereas sans serif italics look very similar to its original, just with a bit of more slant. Italic fonts are used to add emphasis or contrast in designs, as you can see in this flyer design. Next, you will play a cool game called I Shot the Serif to help you distinguish between serif typefaces and sans serif typefaces. Here's how the game is played. And the point of this game is to distinguish between serifs and sans serifs. So the link is going to be below, and you want to go to junior level. And now you look here and you have to shoot the one that is the serif font. So this one is sans serif and this one is serif, so I'm going to shoot it. And it makes cool sound effects. So now it gets a little bit more advanced. You can see this one's sans serif, but these two are serifs. So there we go. And then it gets a little bit more advanced and you can see sans serif, serif, sans serif, sans serif, serif. So, and it also times you. So it's a fun game to play to help get familiar with the difference between sans serifs and serifs. And it's kind of addicting. Then you will find 10 designs with typography in them and note which of the 4 typeface categories each design uses. You can use the downloadable guide for this lesson to refer to that for the typeface categories. Finally, you will go to InDesign to choose different typefaces there. Here I will show you how to use type in InDesign. So now, using InDesign, you can go to your window to make sure your tools is open, and you want to then go to this type tool, and you're going to make a type box. Now, as a shortcut for type, you can just hit the T key on your keyboard, and that'll also allow you to make a type box. So what we're going to do is just type the word typography, and I'm going to go up here and make it 50 point size so we can see it. I'm then going to align its center. That's where this is controlling the paragraphs. This is controlling your different typefaces and the sizes of your type. So we're just going to put that in the center here. And now this default here is Minion Pro. So you can see this is a serif typeface. It has the serifs there, so that is why it is serif. Now I'm going to have you make another one by you can do Command C and then right-clicking, paste in place. Another way you can do that is by clicking on the box, go up to Edit, Copy, and then Edit, Paste. And it'll paste another one. So now you're going to highlight typography and we're going to choose a sans serif typeface. Now I'm going to have you choose Arial because everybody usually has this loaded into their InDesign. So click on Arial. So now you can see here is a sans serif typeface and here is a serif typeface. Now I will show you how you can access more typefaces in Adobe Fonts. When you have Adobe Creative Cloud, you automatically get access to Adobe Fonts. So the way that I like to search for different typefaces here is I go to All Fonts, and then you can type the text that you want to preview. Like let's say you're doing some flyer for a dog brand and you want to see what that looks like. You just type your sample text here. And then they have all these different categories you can choose from. A bit more of a different classification than the basic 4 ones we went over. But let's say we wanted to do something that was luxury, and then it would pull up all the luxury typefaces that you could choose from for you to load then into your Adobe programs. So I'll show you how this works. So let's say you like this one, and it has 10 fonts within this typeface. So we click on it, And then you can see all the different fonts, the variations of this specific typeface. So it has a thin version, thin italic, a light version, a light italic, and all these other different ones, the bold. So you can then, if you click activate 10 fonts, so now they are active in your Adobe Creative Cloud. So when you go back to InDesign, you will see this Amster as an option to choose for your typeface in your design. After that, you can go on to the next lesson about the anatomy of typography. I'll see you in that one. In this lesson, you will learn about the anatomy of typography. Typography is a huge science in itself, but I'm teaching you here what you need to know to create great designs. We will talk about specific typography anatomy to better understand this vital tool called typography for your designs. And when you understand these different points, you're going to thereafter be able to make better choices about what typefaces to use and what looks best. Getting into the anatomy, first there is the baseline, which is where most of your type will sit. There's the overall height of the letters, called the cap height, short for capital letter, and the width of the letters, called the body width. Then there are the descenders, which are the parts of the lowercase letters that go below the baseline. There's the ascenders. The ascenders are the lowercase letter elements that extend above. The X height is the height part of the lowercase that does not include the ascender or descender. When you choose a font size, this is referring to the space between the ascender and the descender of a type. This usually stays consistent or similar between different typefaces. However, the width will usually change a lot depending on the design of that specific typeface. Some are designed to take up more space than others. If you decide to change the typeface you're using in a design, it may adjust the elements dramatically in your design if the typeface is wider than the previous one used. For characters that have rounded elements such as S and O and Q, the curved part will be seen slightly above the cap height and slightly below the baseline. Otherwise, they would appear to be too small due to the big space created from the inside of these curved letters. This is just an optical adjustment so that they appear the same height as the other letters, and it's designed into the typefaces themselves. As you can see, it is like that for serif fonts as well as sans serif fonts. You don't need to adjust them yourself, it's just something to be aware of. Another term you need to understand is called a ligature. Ligatures refer to when two letters can become one unified element to look better than if they were separated. These are also designed into the typefaces by type designers. You can see the F and the I together on the left does not use a ligature, but the F and the I on the right is a ligature, and it looks better that way. It is one shape designed to look better than when they are just the letters themselves. This design example of the lighthouse shows the T and the H as one ligature. It's one design element. This design example of the A, T, and C is a ligature. This typeface makes the letters connected to create a more visibly pleasing design. Now I'm going to show you how to activate and deactivate ligatures so you can use them in InDesign. So you see right now I have them activated, and what you do is you click on your type box, go up to Window, Type, Character. It's going to pull up this panel. You can also get to this if you have the setting under Window, Workspace, Typography. It will have one of the panels as the character and you can click on it. It'll also pop it up there. Then you want to click on this little 3 lines which indicate the menu. And you'll see here I currently have ligatures activated. If I uncheck it, you see it got rid of the ligatures and it will no longer use ligatures. So that's something, if you like them, you just go over here, you check them. If you don't want them, you just go over here and unclick them. There is a term called small caps that is important for you to understand. Words that are the same X height as the lowercase, however the letters are in uppercase. This is lowercase, and this is the small caps. It's best to only use small caps when it's worked into the design of the typeface itself, because otherwise sometimes the line weights can get messed up and not look great. The primary purpose of small caps is to give emphasis to a word when you don't want to use bold, italic, or all caps. In order to see if a typeface has small caps, you go to the menu for InDesign, go down to Type, click Glyphs, and this is going to pull up all of the different glyphs within that typeface. A glyph is a symbol, a character, a letter, everything that's contained within that typeface, what the typeface designer created. So now we can see here that's the all caps version, and there is a small caps version designed. You can see there's a slight difference in the shapes, and that's why it's really important that you choose, when you're choosing small caps, that it is built into the design of the typeface. It'll just look better that way. So in order to activate this specific small caps, you go over here, you select the type, and you then go and click this little button here, and it'll create small caps for you. Here's an example of a block of type where the word important is in small caps to emphasize that it is important. You can see that the lowercase gives a softer feel, and the small caps inserted in between the lowercase maintains that softer feel while still having a bolder element. This is opposed to using the all caps for important, which is more in your face and maybe sometimes isn't what you would want to use in your design. Small caps can also create a very elegant look that I like to use in my own designs sometimes to complement a script typeface, for example. In this case, above it, there is the script typeface with the small caps vintage wine below. I like to use a nice amount of spacing in between the letters when I'm using small caps to give it a more elegant look. Another important point to know about in typography is something called drop caps. This is a large capital letter used as a decorative element at the beginning of a paragraph or section. It helps make the reader more inclined to start reading. Here's an example in a magazine article with the R being larger than the paragraph it's starting. It grabs the interest so that the viewer wants to read the rest of the paragraph. This is something that has been used in type for centuries, as you can see from this old writing with the huge decorative P. You can see that it's called dropped because when the first letter in a paragraph on the page gets dropped down many lines, as in the case of this D, that is the drop cap. Your next steps are to do the little test I created to ensure you understand the different points of the anatomy of typography. And then you'll go on to the next lesson about choosing the right font. There is much more in depth you could go into the anatomy if you're interested, and I'll reference resources for you in the downloadable of this lesson. But what you learned in this lesson is what you need to know in order to get started designing and create great graphic designs. In this lesson, you will learn how to work with fonts so you know what to choose for your design. This is one of the most misunderstood subjects by new designers, and I see so many violations of correct usages in amateur designs. As we discussed in the first lesson, fonts convey different meanings. That's why you should already know who the audience is of your design before you jump into the design. If you want to design for a beauty brand, you may choose feminine fonts. Whereas if you were designing for a tech company, you would choose a much more modern font. An important rule is you don't want to use more than 2 typefaces per design. 2 will help to contrast each other. As in this example, where I'm using Bebas New Pro as the headline, and then Garamond as the second typeface. But when you get into using more than 2, the design can start looking very crowded and unprofessional. You can even use one overall typeface with the different font variations inside, such as Montserrat. For example, an extra bold for the headline, semi-bold for the subhead, and then light for the body copy. You're always going for adding contrast, which will make your designs more visually appealing. Now going back to Adobe fonts, you can see that the typefaces that have a lot of fonts within them are going to be great for doing this point of using 2 different fonts within the same typeface. So Montserrat is a really great example of one that has tons of different fonts inside of it. So now let's say I wanted to design a beauty brand. So I put the name of the beauty brand here, Bella Beauty, and I can go over to the tags and choose luxury because I want it to look luxurious. And I also want it to be a serif. So now this is going to pull up the luxury typefaces that are serifs. And then I can go through And if I see one I like this one, Quest Grande, then I can click on it and I can activate it. It also has a variety of fonts inside, so that's great. So now we go back here and I want to choose a sans serif that will look good with this brand as well, because I'm thinking of having Bella as a serif font and then Beauty in a sans serif. So let's see if any of these would work. And I can choose and just kind of see what I find here. I like this one, Billow. So I'm going to activate that. Now I want to show you, if you had this beauty brand and let's say you decided to go with a futuristic typeface, do you see this doesn't work very well? It's all sorts of different futuristic typefaces that really don't suit your Bella Beauty brand. Now I'm going to my InDesign document and I am going to select the type and I'm going to go up here and choose Quest Grande. That is the one that we just activated in our Adobe fonts. So I'm going to use that as the main typeface. And then down here, I'm going to go and select that one and go back up here to the typefaces. And I'm going to choose this Billow sans serif font to complement. I'm going to do a light and I'm going to make it much smaller. And now you can see how these two work well for this beauty brand. And if it was futuristic, it would not fit the right mood or tone. So that's a cool way to use Adobe fonts so that you can sort through all the different ones and categories and choose something that's appropriate for your brand. Here are some tips for you to add contrast to your typefaces. Use the same family of fonts. This will work extremely well to create consistency and cohesiveness. As you can see in this design where the designer used different fonts within the typeface to add interest. This is the most comfortable and surefire way to stick when you are starting to design. Here's another example of a brochure where the designer is using the same sans serif typeface with different fonts within, specifically the bold and the regular and light versions. As a point to go by, you should always skip at least one font in order to pair fonts within the typefaces. You wouldn't use light and regular together as they're too similar. Rather use light and medium, or regular and semi-bold. Or for even more contrast, use light and bold by skipping over 3 fonts within the typeface. You can see another typeface called Helvetica New, where I show the bold and regular used nicely together. You wouldn't want to use bold and medium because they're too similar with not enough contrast. Remember that contrast makes for more interesting and aesthetic designs. Tip number 2. If you do want to use a sans serif and a serif font paired together, having them with the same X height can help make the design look better. You can see how these are very similar in height and how they look nice paired together. Real-life design examples are this one where the big type is serif and the smaller type is sans serif. You can also see in this layout how they're complementing each other again nicely. Tip number 3 is to use 2 different typeface categories for maximum contrast. That could be a script typeface with a serif typeface. As you can see in this example, where the brand has a beautiful serif font for its logo, and then underneath it uses a complementary script font for the location. Another combination is using a script typeface with a sans serif typeface. You can see I have the sans serif typeface Montserrat, and I use the script typeface Renegade as my accent typeface, and to give the brand visual interest. This is the blog page for my brand. Another combination is a fancy or display typeface with a serif typeface. Like in this Western poster with the fancy typeface being Western and then the business partner written underneath in a serif. You could also do a fancy typeface with sans serif. Just like in this Jazz Festival concert ticket design where jazz is written in a fancy typeface and the other details are all in sans serif. Or in this series of posters where Fantasia is a fancy display typeface and the rest of the poster type is sans serif. Tip number 4, you can use different font widths within the same typeface category. So one that is more condensed and one that is normal width, or you can do one that is more wide width and one that is normal width. You can do this with a sans serif or a serif. Here's a design example that uses wider and more narrow sans serif typefaces to contrast each other. Then on this wine bottle, the main name is a taller and thinner serif typeface, whereas the typeface used above and below in smaller writing is a wider serif. This adds visual interest and contrast. The 5th tip to add contrast with typography is when you have a headline and then a subheadline underneath. The headline or main type will look best if it is at least twice the size of the subheadline or the type underneath it in font size. As an example, if a headline is 60-point size, the subhead should be 30-point size to have a nice contrast. This example is 60-point with 30-point. This is also 60-point with 30-point. When they're too close in size, it will look odd and be competing for attention. Here's a logo example where the main words are at least 50% bigger than the smaller words. Plant fundy is bigger than grow and wild. Then another example where the word maris is more than 50% bigger than uomo, and that adds a lot of visual interest through contrast. Your next steps are using InDesign. You're going to do 3 different font combinations using one typeface. And then using InDesign again, you're going to do 3 different font combinations using 2 different typefaces. I'm going to show you how to do that in InDesign right now. Using the InDesign document that I provide for the downloadable of this lesson, you're going to choose one typeface and work with 2 different fonts within that typeface and see how they contrast each other. So as you can see here, this is Leto Bold. So for the body type, that's what this is called, the main section of any document, it's called the body copy. And this is all placeholder text, but instead of making it bold, I'm going to skip over regular and I'm going to make it light. So you see that adds a nice contrast here. So now you can go to your Pages panel. If you can't find that or it's not open, you go to here and click Pages, and you just select the page you're on and you can drag it down to this little plus sign. That will make a copy of that page. So now you're going to choose another typeface. So let's, for the sake of this example, I'm going to choose Garamond. So you can see this is Garamond Bold. Now I'm going to go here, select the body copy. I'm going to go to Garamond and I'm going to skip over semi-bold and go to regular. So now you see this is a nice contrast. I'm going to have you do it one more time. Go to your Pages panel, drag it to that little plus sign. And now we're going to choose one more. Let's do Billow. And then I'm going to select the body copy, go to Billow. And so the headline is bold, so I'm skipping over medium, going to regular, and it creates a nice contrast. Now what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate your page again over here in the Pages panel, drag it to that plus sign, and now instead of having it within the same typeface, we're going to do 2 different typeface categories. So we're going to keep this sans serif headline and we're going to change the body copy to being serif. So let's just choose Garamond. So see, now we have sans serif with serif. Now we're going to duplicate that again in our Pages and we're going to choose a script font. So let's do this one here. Okay. So there's my script font. You can see how it looks with this serif. Let's duplicate that page again and see how it looks with a sans serif. So you see the contrast. And then one more time, and I'm going to have you do a fancy typeface. Let's choose this kind of creepy one. Make it a little bit bigger. And you can see how, let's do this one in a light font. Okay, so now you see this contrast, this fancy typeface with this sans serif typeface. So now you are going to do the same thing with the InDesign document I provided, so you can get familiar with how to add contrast to your typefaces. Then you can share these in the Facebook group if you want, and then go on to the next lesson, typography spacing. I'll see you there. In this lesson, you will learn about 3 vital tools to make your designs look better that all involve the spacing of your typography. The first of these is the space between the baselines of your type. You can see that space between lines is important to make the type readable. This is referred to as leading, because back in the days of setting type to printing presses, they would make more space between type lines by adding in pieces of actual lead. You don't want your lines to be right on top of each other with the ascenders and descenders clashing, as it's gonna not look professional and it'll be hard for the viewer to read. You also don't want your line spacing to be too far apart that it becomes hard to read the lines together or to see what is part of the same paragraph. A good rule is to have your leading at 20% more than the size of your font. The default size for your leading is always going to be 20%. So you see this is on auto. So if your point size was 20 point size, it would be 24 point leading. Now you can always manually adjust this by going up. See, I'm going up by clicking this little arrow here, or going down to make it less. The top shows the size of your font, and this shows the size of your leading. The next of these typography spacing keywords is tracking. This means the space between a range of letters or characters. Here are examples of normal amount of tracking, more tracking, and too little tracking. In order to adjust the tracking in your InDesign document, go to the type you would like to adjust, and then if you want to adjust everything, you can click Command A, which will select the entire amount of type, or with your cursor, you just select the specific ones you would like to change the tracking on. So for this case, I'm going to just select this top part, and this is where you adjust the tracking up here. Now, what you're going to do is you can either enter a number, so let's say starting at 0, that's the normal for this typeface, what the tracking is. If we make it 10, you see it increases the space between the characters, between the letters. Or if we go the bottom, it'll go down. You see it's getting way too tight. So that's how you can change it. There's also a way to do it on your keyboard by holding down Option right arrow, that'll make it bigger, or Option left will make it smaller. That's helpful so you don't have to always use this area here, and you can get it to an exact point that you want it. You can also use tracking in headlines or when you're using all caps or small caps to give more importance to the words and make it look better. You can see this is before tracking. The all caps look a little squished, but after the tracking, they look better. When you have the tracking around uppercase, it gives the sense of an engraving in stone concept, which really helps to make the type look more majestic and important. The same goes for small caps. When you use tracking for lowercase, you tend to get an illegible design, so it's best to use tracking only for all caps or small caps for that reason. The third of the typography spacing keywords is kerning. That means the individual spacing between letters or characters. The difference between tracking and kerning is that tracking takes into account the whole word or sentence or paragraph, whereas kerning is just the space between two specific letters or characters. You can see the first is kerning from the typeface design, and then the next one is too much kerning, and the last is too little kerning. This uses your balance skills as you want letters to look balanced within a word. This can be used when it optically looks weird, or in some typefaces they do a horrible job of designing how certain letters look together, and then you need to compensate by decreasing or increasing the space between them. You can see this bad example of kerning where there's too little space between the B and the A, and the L and the A, but then there is too much space between the A and the N, and the C and the E. It doesn't look balanced. So you have to ensure there is an even spacing optically between the letters. When you say optically, that means it needs to look good to the eye. In order to adjust the kerning, you go into your type box and go to the space you want to adjust the spacing of, the kerning of. So let's say we want to increase the space between this N and the I. So we put our cursor there and we go up to this right above the tracking. This is the kerning. This will increase by doing the up arrow to make it bigger, and this will increase to make it smaller. You can also use the Option right arrow to make it bigger, or Option left to make it smaller, and that's helpful and makes it easier when you're dealing with a lot of different type to just have it on your keyboard. Then there's this really fun game called Type. And what it does is it helps you practice the spacing between your letters. So this helps you get good at balancing and doing great kerning. So you can see these two letters stay the same place. You have to adjust the Y and the P to make them evenly balanced. And then it tells you where it should have been. So you see how that works? Here's another one. And you just adjust it so it optically looks best and balanced. So then you can go and practice this one yourself. The link is going to be in the description below. To practice, your assignment is to lay out type in InDesign using the downloadable I provide, and adjust the leading, tracking, and kerning until you feel comfortable with these 3 vital aspects of typography spacing. Then you're going to go on to the next lesson, Typography Mistakes to Avoid. I'll see you there. In this lesson, you will learn about typography mistakes that you want to always be aware of and avoid to make your designs much better. The first mistake to avoid is justified type with rivers. There's something that's used often in magazines and newspapers called justified type. So when you're selecting your type, there's 2 options up here. There's the A, which means it'll all be related to type. And when you click on this little paragraph formatting controls, it'll pull up things related to working in paragraphs. So these different options show you how to adjust your type. So this one is left aligned, means it's all left aligned, and it has then this ragged type there. This one is justified. It means on the left it's straight and the right it's straight. So now sometimes what this creates is something called rivers. You can see here this is a river where there's lots of extra space in between the letters. It doesn't look great, and it also can make it harder on the viewer to read. And it also creates a lot of hyphenations. Now, if you want to get rid of hyphenations, you just select the type, and you see this little box here, you uncheck it, and now there won't be any more hyphenations. That also will create more rivers because the program automatically puts hyphens to avoid as many rivers as possible. In order to get rid of these rivers, you can sometimes just adjust the size of your type box to look better, or you can adjust the tracking. So that's going here to your character formatting controls and then adjusting, remember, our tracking here. So you see when you make it a little bit more, it creates more rivers. Sometimes if you make less, it'll make less rivers. In this case, having it at 0 actually creates the least amount of rivers. Then the next mistake is when the ragged type looks unbalanced. Ragged type is when it is aligned all on the left and then it's ragged. It's not straight like justified. It's ragged on this side. And sometimes this space looks a little weird, like in this case. So something you can do to make it look better is select your type, and then you're going to go over to this menu option here, and you can go down to Balance Ragged Lines. So that'll adjust it to the best of the program's ability. You can also sometimes adjust the width to make it look a little bit better, and you can see it's better than it was before. It's a nicer shape around the type. That's something to be aware of when you're using left aligned. You want to make sure it doesn't look like a staircase like this, or look really top heavy where there's a lot on the top and then a little bit here. It just is not pleasing to the eye. You got to make sure you're aware of those spaces when you're designing. The next mistakes are called orphans, widows, and runts. An orphan is when the first line of a paragraph is left in a previous column. The widow is when the last line of a paragraph goes to the next column, and a runt is when a single word appears at the bottom of a paragraph. All of these are bad form in a design, as aside from just not looking great, and they make readability harder. Another mistake is to stretch or alter the typefaces unless you're doing it specifically for a logo and are trained in how to do logo design. I had someone who used to tell me that you could go in here and select a letter, and then you could go to this section, which makes the actual font wider. So you are manipulating the actual character itself. And what that does is it makes it look weird because the typeface was designed a specific way and you're adjusting things and it doesn't look balanced anymore. Also, they used to tell me I could make it taller or thinner. Also, looks very weird. So don't do that. Don't stretch your type. Don't adjust it. It is the wrong thing to do. There's other solutions always for whatever problem you're trying to avoid. Your next steps are using InDesign, create justified type without rivers. Using InDesign as well, create ragged type that is balanced. And then using InDesign, lay out 2 columns, avoiding orphans, widows, or runts. Then you'll go on to the next lesson, reliable typefaces. I'll see you there. In this lesson, you will learn the most reliable and classic typefaces that are great to use when you're uncertain of which ones to use. The points to look for in typefaces are that it has even kerning, so you don't have to keep going in and adjusting the kerning all the time in your designs, and it should have consistency between the letters, it should have balance, and it should be easy to read. For serif fonts, you can never go wrong if you use Garamond. This typeface was created in the 1500s. It's simple, legible, well-balanced, and has very nice letter spacing designed into the typeface itself. Some other great serif typefaces are Baskerville, Bodoni, and Dido. For sans serif typefaces, you can never go wrong with Helvetica. It was created in the 1900s. It's very well balanced, looks clean, consistent, and it's very easy to read. Some other great sans serif typefaces are Futura, Montserrat, and Proxima Nova. Typefaces that you want to avoid as they're considered not good in the design industry because they're overused, they're ugly, they have bad balance, and they're just not legible are Comic Sans, Papyrus, Brush Script, Copperplate Gothic, and Courier. I will have a list of more top typefaces to choose from so you can reference them in your designs, as well as ones to avoid in the downloadable for this lesson. Next, you'll be having some additional typography practice projects before we move into color. And for these, they will all be in black and white, since it's important to master design in black and white before moving into color. I'll see you there. Over the next 3 lessons, you will be laying out designs using only typography and gray boxes. You are going to now be using type when you're designing because you just went through the whole typography section. So first, we are going to start with the first design. Here we go. So going to InDesign, you're going to create a new document, and we are going to do it at a letter size. Just going to use 1 page for right now, not facing pages. Going to have you set the margins at 0.75 inches. I'm going to have you make it 3 columns wide, and you can name this one for TC Typography Practice. And you're going to hit Create. All right, so now we have our document, and I also like to go up to Layout, Create Guides, and create a middle. So I know where the middle is. I'm just going to say 1 with 0. And then I'm going to create also 3 rows. So I know where the thirds are. And I'm going to say 0 gutter for that. And I want to do it across the whole page. So I'm going to say, OK. So now I'm going to go to the rectangle tool and I'm going to, holding down Shift, drag until I hit the edge of that gutter. And I'm going to move it down until I see that pink line. That's a smart guide that indicates it's in the center. If you want to turn on smart guides, go to View, Grids and Guides, Smart Guides. And that will make it so that you can see when things are lined up, when they're centered, etc. So now selecting this box, I'm going to go over and make sure I'm not in the stroke. I want it to be the fill, and I'm going to say black. But I want this to be 20% black to make it a gray. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to change that to 20, and that means it's going to be 20% black. So now we have our gray box. Now what we're going to be doing is I want to make sure you have the two fonts activated, two typefaces. That's Billow and Garamond. So if you do not have those activated, you can go to Adobe Fonts, and here is Billow, and then we're going to say Adobe Garamond, and just make sure that those are active. We're going to be creating this page that's from a book. It's kind of like a page in one of these coffee table books about Paris. But even though we don't have any pictures, we're still going to lay out the type in an interesting way. So first, what I'm going to do is create a text box here, and I'm going to write sunset. And then I'm going to do Command A, selecting the type. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to type Billow. If you have that loaded, it should show up. I'm going to go to Billow Bold, and I'm going to make this type 120. Now, if it then goes over, you can just drag that there. So that's a bit bigger than I want it to be. So I want it to go to this margin here. So what I'm going to do is select the type again, and I'm going to make it a little smaller. Okay, so that's a good size, 108. So that's right on that line. Now I'm going to make the text box here, and I'm going to go on to my next text box. So I am going to be creating something down here. Create T, drag that box, and we're going to be writing in Paris. And I'm going to go Command A to select it. I'm going to go over here and type Adobe Garamond. And this is going to be italic. So I want this to be italic. So we're contrasting the bold sans serif font with an actual serif font. So, and I'm going to have it ital here. So I'm going to make it up to 35. That's still significantly smaller than this one. Actually want to bring it down to 28. Good. Okay, so I'm just going to drag that there. Now I'm going to create another text box, and I'm just going to type in this funny phrases, and then they went off into the sunset forever. Very happy with the way they were. Okay, so obviously this is just a made up subject, but I'm going to do Command A, and I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to do Adobe Garamond, so it stays within the same typeface. I'm going to do regular, and half of 28 is 14. So in order to make it 50% less to keep the contrast, I'm just going to bring this type up to 14. I'm going to make this bounding box a little bit smaller. And I want to bring this a little bit lower down to this row where this third, you see, I think that just makes it a little bit offsetted. It's not directly in the center. And I also want to make this box actually a little bit lighter. So I'm going to make this at 14%. That's going to be better. Okay, one other thing I want to make sure is that the space between sunset, Paris, and this text box is the same. I also think that they're a little bit too squashed together. So I want to bring this one down a little bit. And now if you have your smart guides turned on, you can drag it and you see it will indicate there is equal space above and below if you place it here. So I'm going to place it there. And now we have this one there. So it's okay to do something like where you're going over a box or an image, as long as the background of this, whatever you're putting the type over, is light enough or dark enough that it contrasts the type that's in front of it. Okay, great. So we got part of ours done. Now I'm going to take this one and I'm going to do Command C, Command V to duplicate it. And instead of 100, I'm going to say what's half of 100? That would be 50. So I am going to put France. And instead of this being bold, where the text is filled in, I'm going to do Command A. I'm going to go over to here and I'm going to say 0 fill. And I'm going to click on this little section here where is the stroke. And I'm going to add a stroke to this type. Now, I don't want it to be that thick, so I want to make it 0.5. So the way I got to the stroke is it was in the advanced workspace. When you're in Workspace Advanced, it will be one of these panels here called Stroke. You can also get to it by going up to here, Window, and then Stroke. Good, so now we have created our stroke. Now I'm going to be moving this. I'm going to first switch it so that it is going to be vertical like that. Now I want to see where my margin is because I'm going to be placing it at the margin. I also want to be thinking with aligning it with this top of the S. So you see I dragged on the ruler to bring down this guide here. So I'm going to move this down so that it is aligned there. Now I don't like that it's too close to the top of this square. So I'm going to actually make this a little bit smaller. Let's see if we make it 45, about 44. Okay, good. So now, there we go. So this is France because we're pretending this book is about France and Paris, and this chapter is about the sunset. All right. So now there's a few more things that I want to do because we have all this white space above and below, and I want to add some just small elements to help to fill that a little bit and balance it better. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my rectangle again, and I am going to hold down Shift to create a square. So there we have a square, and I am going to have it at 2. So you see you can also adjust the stroke here. You could also go to your stroke panel and make it 2. So I'm going to zoom in and make sure that it is lined with that margin. It's not over it. And as you can see, this one needs to be moved over a little bit to be fully aligned. Okay, so now those are aligned there. Now I want to put the name of the company that created this book here. And for the sake of this, we're calling them The One. So I'm going to take T, drag my text box, and I'm going to write the, and then return, enter to get to the next line, 1. Okay, now I can't have this in this Minion Pro, right? Because that would be 3 typefaces. So I want to use the sans serif typeface of Billow again. So I'm going to do Command A. I'm going to go up here, type Billow. I'm going to use the bold. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I definitely don't want the leading to be that much. So I'm going to decrease the leading. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to bring this over here. And let me see, I'm just going to go out and just kind of look at it from there. I think the type needs to be a little bit bigger in here. And one thing I want to do is I want to make sure that it is equal space from here as it is from here. Now, the way I do this is I usually take a rectangle and holding down Shift, I just create a square. And this helps me to align it so that I know that it is going to be equal spacing. So you can see I can just put guides there, which help dragging the guides. And then I'm not going to be aligning my text box because you see the type is a little bit not fully to the top of it. So I'm actually aligning the type itself. Good. So now that is equal distance, but I also want to increase the size a little bit. And then I also want to verify that this is also, so maybe a little small. Perfect. There we go. You see now there's equal space on this side, and this side. Just keeps it have a clean look to it. Okay, so the one. That's the name. Just for fun, that's what I'm calling it. Okay, so then we have France here. We have the one there. Just gonna zoom out, Z option to create that minus. So it looks like we are missing something here, doesn't it? Looks like there could be some other element to balance this up here. So I am going to put the name of the book. And for that, I also want to use this sans serif. So I'm going to do Command C, Command V over here. And I'm going to do the Book of Travel. Okay. So it's in that same size type. And let's just do Command 0 so we can look at the whole thing. So something I don't like, I feel that there's a little bit of competing elements like the bold here, the bold here, and the bold here. So I am going to make this into light, which is going to help just balance it. It's not the first thing we're looking at. We want them to see sunset first and then see in Paris and read this. Then they can kind of look at this logo and, oh, cool, France here. And then they can see the name of the book. So it makes it so it's not bold enough and taking their attention. And it still is a nice element there. Now, there's one point I wanted to add, which is having some sort of a line element, because we have this square here. I wanted to have a repetition of a line there. So I am going to go to my line tool and I'm going to drag it here so that it's the same size as this box. And I'm going to keep it at 1 instead of 2 strokes. So see, this one is at 2, this one is at 1. I want to keep it at 1 because I'm going to be having it in front of the Book of Travel, and I want them to be equal width, equal line weight. We could even take this one down to 0.5 probably, and that would be even closer. Yeah, that's a better line weight. It fits nicely with this one. Okay, great. So now we have our finished design. And let's just check off if we have all of our original fundamentals of composition and layout. In this, we have hierarchy. Sunset is clearly the most important thing we want them to look at. We have balance, where this is balancing this type is balanced with this, and this bold word is balanced with this softer square. We have alignment. All of these are aligned on this side. This is aligned to this. And we also have white space down here and up here. We have repetition with different elements and the sizes of these lines being similar. We have the same typography, the same typeface used here, 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 and here, as well as these two are the same typeface. We have contrast as well because we have a big element with a smaller square. We have a bold type with outlined and softer ones in that typeface. We have different fonts that contrast each other in size as well, where we have the big, the medium, and the small. So it checks off all those points. That's great. So this is your finished design. So now it's your turn to go do this design, create that document, do it exactly as I have it laid out. And once you have done this, you can go on to the next lesson where you're going to do another design using black and white type with gray boxes. I'll see you there. In this lesson, you are going to be creating a dance party flyer. Go back to that InDesign document that you created that sunset page for the book. And then what you can just do is go to your Pages panel on the right. If you can't see it, go to Window, Pages, and it'll open up here. Then click on this little plus sign, create a new page. And you're going to want to have 2 fonts activated from Adobe Fonts. So go to Adobe Fonts, Good Karma Smooth. We're going to be using this as a script font. And then you also want to activate Proxima Nova. So you can either get there by going to All Fonts and searching Proxima Nova. There you go. You want to go and activate that one right there. Okay, great. So now let's go back to our InDesign document. So the first thing we are going to do is we're going to create the big dance party type. So I'm going to hold down T. You can also do T here. And we're going to make a big text box. And I'm going to say dance and then enter party. So I'm going to make this much bigger. I'm going to probably do 150. Oop, that's a bit too big. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it at 115. All right. Now I'm going to make this Proxima Nova Black. So it's going to be really a thick typeface, thick font. Now I'm going to adjust the leading. Feel this is way too apart. And I'm going to get it closer. Now, one thing I want to do for this one is I am going to drag a guide here and I'm going to line it up with the side of the D. I'm going to drag one over here. I'm going to line that up with that side of the E. And I want to make party go to the sides. Now, this is one of those rare exceptions when you are having the typefaces, the fonts, different sizes. And this is okay when you're doing it in this block type of type way. So I'm going to just increase this type size until it's aligned on both sides. So this is a little bit over here. So I'm going to select it, just bring it down here. Okay, now sometimes if you can't get it to line up exactly, you can put a space here and then you can adjust the kerning in between. So remember, you hold down Option and then left key or right key, and I'm just getting it to line up. Okay, so now it's lined up to that D. Now this one is obviously a little bit over, so we might just need to take down the font size a hair. We still have a little room over here now. Now that's perfectly lined up. Good. This is a little bit weird on the tracking there, or the kerning there. I just adjusted the space in between the T and the Y. So now we probably need to bring this down a tad to maybe 121. Okay, good. So you see that's how you line it up. And like I said, this is a rare time when you'll have the fonts different sizes. It's really only when you have them stacked like this and you want them to be lined up on both sides. All right, so now that we have this type done, I want to just go to my layers panel because I want to make sure, and layers is over here, or window layers. I want to make sure I have a type layer, and then I'm going to have what I like to call art. So that's where I'll put the boxes, the different lines and things that I'm going to be implementing in this design. So now what I'm going to do is create a diamond. So I'm going to zoom out by hitting down Z and then Option click. We'll make the minus. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hold down Shift to make a perfect square, which is going to turn into a diamond. Now you see I'm doing this on the art layer, and I'm going to actually lock by pressing there my type layer so that nothing moves while I'm creating this. Now by holding down Shift and rotating, I can do it so it's now changed the orientation by 90 degrees. Okay, so now we have our diamond here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to make sure using Smart Guides that it aligns to the center of this type, that these are aligned to each other. One other way you can do that, unclick that lock and select them both by dragging, and you can go here to make sure they're aligned that in the center, and then also aligned this way. They're aligned this way and this way. Great. Okay, now I'm going to lock my type again. I'm going to go back to my diamond and I'm going to put a stroke on it. So I can either go up here and I can increase the stroke to 5, or I can also go here and change the size of the stroke. Now I also want to have it so that this is not 100% black. So I'm going to go to my swatches panel, window, color, swatches. And I'm going to, while I have this diamond still selected, I'm going to have this on the black. I'm going to put it at 35%. So that's going to make it a lot more gray, as you can see here. Now, one thing I also want to do is I want to put rounded corners on this diamond. So I'm going to go up to Object, Corner Options, and I have the preview on so I can see what it looks like. I'm going to click on this option. These are the corner options. It allows you to change the corners to be these kind of fancy things, inset, inverse rounded. We're just going to keep it simple, go to rounded. Now you can also increase the amount of rounded. We're going to leave it at 0.25. And if you were to unclick that, you could adjust so only the top one is different, but I want them to all be the same. So I'm going to keep that locked. All right, now we're going to hit OK. All right, so this is where we're at now. All right, so now what we're going to do, the next step, is that we are going to be taking this dance party, and I need to go back to my layers to unlock it. And we're going to test what it looks like outlining it. So instead of having it filled, we're going to make it so that in the swatches, we take that type and we're going to apply none to the colors. And then we're going to click on our stroke. This indicates the stroke of the type. And we're going to say black. So you see how it made the stroke now appear. And I'm going to increase the stroke by going over to Stroke Panel to... I want to do 2.5. So if you want a specific one, you can select there and actually type in 2.5. Okay, so now I'm going to click on my tool, on my arrow over here, selection tool. And so it goes out of the type tool. I'm going to hit W and we can see what it looks like. Okay, I think I want to increase the stroke a little bit more. Let's do it at 4. Okay, so this is getting a little bit too tight here. Just want to separate these a little bit. I think I'm going to just increase the tracking, select, and I'm going to hold down Option, right arrow. I want to make sure that these still align, which they've gone a little bit haywire here. So I'm going to select this one and decrease the type size to 120. And there we go. That looks like it's now all lined up. Okay, awesome. So now what we're going to do is, you see there's a situation where this stroke is, you can see it through the dance party. Now there's one way we could do that, which is just to select our type, go to our swatches, go to our fill layer and say white. Now it filled that with white so that it's not showing, right? So we have this, we go here, fill with white. Now, I don't like that very much because then it adjusted the stroke a little bit and it made it so the stroke wasn't as big. So I'm going to go in and show you another trick that we can do. Now we need to go back and we need to lock our type layer because it's going to be a little bit difficult to do this without that. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working with this stroke. So you want to select your stroke and we're going to be working with the pen tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to be creating little anchor points here, which is going to help us to delete a section of that stroke. So we're going to see when you hover over and it has that little plus sign on the pen. So then you just click and now you've created an anchor point. Now we want to make sure that our next anchor point over here is equal distance, right? So in order to be able to see these anchor points, you have to be on your direct selection tool or your pen tool. So the direct selection tool is also A for short. But meanwhile, what we're going to also do is go to our rectangle tool and I'm going to just create a little rectangle. I'm going to move it here and I want to see, I'm going to move it so that I can see the size compared to this anchor point. Okay, so we're going to move it so that it's at the start of the D. So that goes from the start of the D to the anchor point. So that's the width that we want to have between this part of the D and the next anchor point, you see. So now going back to our pen tool, we go over here. And when we see that little line, oh, see what happened there? Is I just made one that was not on the path. So that's why you need to make sure you're always selecting the diamond, the correct stroke. and go back to our pen tool. And now it's hovering over there. And now it's going to be on the correct one. So I'm going to put plus sign there. Now, in order to delete this section, now we have 2 anchor points. So that means it's anchored there. No matter what you do this section, these ones will all stay the same. So now we're going to add a little other anchor point right in the middle. And now I'm going to go back to my A tool. I'm going to click that middle one and I'm going to delete. Okay, so let's zoom out. I can show you what you just did. You see now we have deleted this part of the diamond, which now with equal spacing here and here, we have created this little window. Now we're going to do the same for the P, the Y, and the E. So we're going to zoom back in. We're going to take our little rectangle guy here as a guide. I'm going to curve him around. Okay, so we are going to put our next anchor point. Select the outside, go to our pen tool, hover over, and create one there. Now we're going to take our rectangle. Now we need to select our diamond, and we go, you can hit P for your shortcut. We're going to create another anchor point right there. Okay, now we can move that out of the way. We need to create one more anchor point in the middle. Got to make sure you have the right thing selected. Create your anchor point, go to your A tool, click on that middle one, and delete. Let's do Command 0, see where we're at. All right, so we are getting rid of these little sections. So now we're going to go over to this side. And we got to go back here. Remember, spacebar to move. Click that guy, drag him back over here. Okay, so let's start with our Y. So we got to turn this guy here so we can use him as a guide on where we're going to put it. Select our diamond, hit the P tool, and wait for the plus sign, and click. We made our anchor point. Take our little rectangle, bring him over here. Select that diamond, hit the P tool, and wait for the plus sign, and there we go. Create one more anchor point right there. Go to our A tool, and click on that little box, and delete. All right, let's do this next one over here, which is going to be our E. All right, put that rectangle, click on our stroke, hit the P key, hover over, and plus sign. Oh, that one was not on it. So we want to make sure we're on it. Plus sign and click. And then we're going to take our little rectangle. This is the last time we have to do this. Go over here, click on our diamond, hit the P tool, and click. And now we're going to make one more in the middle. Go to our A tool, and delete. All right. Command 0. Let's take a look. Okay, cool. So now we have our dance party with that diamond. And now the stroke is no longer going through the letters. That is what we wanted to achieve. So this is a little bit more advanced stuff than you were learning before. So this is great. Now, there's one thing, this one's a little bit bothering me that I think we need to have, because it's kind of an interesting thing. Sometimes you're going to need to just eyeball this, meaning that if something doesn't look right, you can always adjust it, even if it's not exactly the same space. You might need to be making more space here. So I think we need to get rid of some of this line here to make it look a little bit better. So I'm going to put an anchor point there, and I'm going to delete this one. And let's just see. I think that adds a little bit more breathing room. Let's see what it was before. I'm going to say edit, redo. Yeah, I just think that's a little bit cleaner. For this purpose, that's why I want to leave it. All right, so don't forget to do Command S while you're working. Just want to keep saving things. Good, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create our accent, our contrasting typeface, which is going to be that good karma typeface. So now we're going to lock the art layer, unlock the type layer. We're going to create another text box by going over here to T or hitting T here, create a text box. and we're going to put festival. Okay, so we're going to do Command A, make it center. Go over here. You can type in good karma, and we're going to do good karma smooth regular. Okay, we're going to make the font size 45, maybe a little bit bigger. Let's see. I am going to move this here. And you can see we want to center it with the dance party. So that red line indicates it's in the center of the page. So let's see. Okay, I want to have a little bit more space above it. I'm going to move it a little bit down. Okay, cool. So that's where I'm going to leave it for right now. And now what I want to do to finish up this middle part, and then we're going to do the parts around it, is I want to add some stars here. So we're going to go to our art layer, unlock it, and I am going to go to our shape tool. I'm going to do polygon. Now remember, you learned this in the InDesign lessons. I am going to go hit down on the artboard. I'm going to decide I want it to be 0.5 inches, 0.5. I want the number of sides to be 5 and the star inset to be 50%. And we got our star. So I'm going to make this black. Swatches, make sure you're not on the outline, you're on the fill. Go to black. And we're going to move this positioned in the center. Okay, so now I want the space between here to be equal to here. I'm going to go to our rectangle tool. I'm going to check this. And I'm going to move this up here. Okay, so I need to move this little guy down. Great. Now I'm going to add a smaller version on both sides by doing Command C and then right-clicking paste in place. I'm going to drag it next to it, and holding down Shift, I am going to adjust the size slightly. And let's see if I make it lined up right there. I think that works. I'm going to do Command C, paste in place, holding down Shift, dragging it over here. And now I want all of these little star guys to be aligned. So I'm going to drag my cursor to select them. Now I'm also accidentally selecting this diamond too. So while you're selecting something, let's say you want to get rid of one of the selections, you can hold down Shift and it will unselect that one that you clicked on. So now we got our 3 stars. I want them to be evenly spaced. So a way that you can do that is go over here to our distribute horizontal centers. And now that just evenly spaced them. I'm going to verify they're in the middle. Yep, we got our smart guides there indicating it's in the middle. So there we go. Now one problem is I realize this is on the wrong layer and I want to make sure I keep things clean in my InDesign file. So this is when you have a layer, you can color code it. So when it's red, that means everything that is on that layer is going to have the bounding box be red. So you see right now, this is red, which means it's on the type layer. You can see the type is red, festival is red. So I'm going to do Command X. That's going to delete it, but it's also going to have copied the placement. So I'm going to then go to my art layer. I'm going to right click, paste in place. That's going to go to exactly where it was before. And there we go. So we have our middle part. So this is coming together. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add the top where it's going to say you are invited. So for that, I am going to use the same typeface as I have here, but I'm going to use a different font within that typeface. So what I'm going to do is do T, create a text box, and I'm going to type you are invited to. Now I'm going to do Command A, hit enter. I'm going to go over here to Proxima Nova and I'm going to do a bold. Okay, good. So I'm going to just increase the size to 30. I think that's too big. I'm going to go to 22. Let's see how that works. I'm going to have a little bit of tracking to make sure that you can read it well. Now we're going to place it above here. So just like that, you are invited to. Now, one thing I want to do next is I'm going to do Command C, Command V, copying that text box. I'm going to go down here to below the dance party, And I'm going to create another thing down here where I'm going to say, bring your dance partner at midnight to, and then we're going to pretend that the name of our club is Club Footloose, just like the movie. If you remember, if you're a dance person like I was as a child, then Footloose. Okay, it's the name of a dance movie. So now I'm going to select this top because you see it's lowercase and I don't want to have this have much tracking. This one has 40 tracking. That's way too much when you have lowercase letters. So I'm going to put it at 0, just what the default is for this typeface. And I'm going to, remember, skip over. So we have bold, semi-bold, medium. I think I'm even going to go to regular to create a nice contrast between bring your dance partner at midnight to Club Footloose. And then just so you know, we have the consistency in the size between this top you're invited to and this bottom. Okay, great. So now I'm going to make that type box go there. And I haven't finalized the spacing, so I know that the spacing is a little different in between these things. That's okay. I just want to get the type all in place. And because everything is centered aligned, I'm keeping everything center aligned. If I were to have this one be left aligned at this point, it would look a little bit odd. So I'm just going to keep it all center aligned. Now I'm going to do Command C, Command V. I'm going to create one more text box down here where I'm going to put the pretend URL. So it's going to be www.clubfootloose.com. I'm going to do Command A to select it, and I'm going to bring this type to 12. It's a little small there, 14. Okay, good. So now we have our different type in place. So I am now going to move this down. I want to add some cool line element here just for fun. So I'm going to go to my line tool there and drag it so it takes up that space. I want to make the type, I want to make the stroke 0.5. So while you're selecting that line, you can go up to the top, 0.5. And then I'm going to do Command C, paste in place by right clicking, and I'm going to have that there. I want to have a little bit more space in between, so I'm going to go like that. Now, you see my smart guides indicated those are now equal distance between there, and I want this guy to also have that same distance. So, good. There we go. Now, what we're going to do is there's one last thing. These people don't know what date it is. What date is this cool dance party festival? So we're going to create the date here in a circle. So the priority here, the hierarchy, is we see that you're invited, and then we see dance party festival. That's the biggest thing on the page. And then we're saying bring your dance partner, and then they can go to the website to find out more. So we also need to add a date here. And I'm going to put it right in this little spot here. And I'm going to make it a smaller circle, smaller stroke, so it's not as big and powerful as this one, but it still will get their attention. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to hold down on our rectangle tool, and I'm going to click the ellipse frame tool. Okay, so I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to drag this, and I want it to align to the bottom and still have enough space and align to the side. So you see the bottom of this diamond is there, and I also want it to align to the side of the diamond. So I can put it right there. And I'm going to make it a tiny bit smaller. And you see right now it's on the type tool. That's not good, right? Or I mean, it's on the type layer. So I'm going to do Command X, get rid of it, go to our art layer, right click, paste in place. Okay, now we're going to go to stroke. And I'm going to make this at 1.5 stroke. I'm going to remind myself this one, what the swatch is. It's at 35% of black. So I'm going to apply the same to here. Now we could do an object style for that, but I'm not going to right now. So we're going to go 35. Okay, so there we go. And now we need to add the date. So I'm going to just move this up, and there's a shortcut which is Command Option C. And that makes it so the bounding box for your type contracts around the type. So It makes it so that you don't get this annoying things just sticking out all over the place. So that's helpful if you're trying to create another text box. So now what I want to do is go back to my layers. I'm going to lock the art layer because I want that circle to stay in place. So now on our type layer, I am going to take this guy. I'm going to do Command C, Command V. Just allows me to have something as a starting point to work with. I'm going to put June. And I want this to be extra bold. So I want it to say June, extra bold. So I'm going to do my Command Option C, which makes the bounding box go back to normal. So I'm going to put June there. I'm going to do Command C, Command V, and I'm going to create now 21. And I want to make this probably 40 point. I might need to go bigger than that. And I'll show you what I'm going to do. But first, or where I'm going to place this. First, I want to make it stroke. So it has some repetition with this. So I'm going to make the stroke in our swatches. I'm going to say 0 fill. I'm going to put a stroke on it. Same stroke size as I have for the outside circle, which is going to be 1.5. Whoop, not 15, 1.5. It doesn't like my point. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to do Command Option C again, get that bounding box fixed. Okay, so let's take a look here. Let's zoom in. Okay, so this is a little bit out of alignment. The June is a little bit too wide. I'm going to decrease the tracking there. And I'm going to increase the size of this 21. Now there's two ways I could do that. While I'm clicking on the bounding box, I can go up here, which indicates the whole box, whether it's an image or a text box. You can increase this, and as long as this little guy is locked, it will keep the proportions equal when you're scaling it. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and my goal here is to align the side of the J and the side of the E with the 21. So I'm going to move it up, and it looks like we did that by scaling it. Now with the scaling, that means we also adjusted the stroke size. So I am going to go back here and make sure it's 1.5. Now I'm just going to move it and make it centered there. I can also drag, I need to unlock my art layer, drag those so that they're all equal and center align it. It actually looks pretty good. Okay, good. So now I'm going to go Command 0. I'm going to take a look at what we got here. So now I feel at this point that this is a little bit, probably this size of this bounding box needs to be a little bit bigger just to be consistent. It looks a little too tiny. So what if I made it at 5 point? Now it's kind of competing for attention, right? So I guess we do need to just go back to 1.5 and we'll just keep it at that. Now, what if I made this one that same 35%, 35% of black? So it kind of makes it so it's definitely something you see, but it's not so in your face. The first thing you really see is this dance party. One thing I want to adjust on this is I think that there's a little bit too much space between the 2 and the 1. And that might mean that we need to make this one a little bit smaller to have it fit within. Let's just go check it out. Okay, so now those are aligned okay. Good. So we have our 21 June, you're invited. Okay, so now our next thing, now I want you to see this too, is this space is different than this space. And I feel like this is kind of a lost soul up here. So I am going to create a box around it, just like I did for this one. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to create the rectangle tool. Now this is something that we're going to apply the same corner options to. So, oops, what's the problem here? We created this on the wrong layer. So I need to do Command X, get rid of it, put it on the art layer, paste in place. I'm going to lock the type so I don't have to deal with that one right this second. Now I am going to create the stroke. I'm going to do the same 1.5 that we had below. I'm going to go to swatches, make it 35, and I'm going to go to our object, corner options, I'm going to go to rounded, and I want it to be fully rounded. And there you go. So now we have that. You are invited to Dance Party Festival. Bring your dance partner at midnight. Okay, now I'm going to undo this type because I want to make sure that these are centered. They were not, so we're going to center them. And I want this to be within the margin. So you see we have our margin here. I'm going to bring it down, and now it's right below the margin. That's in the right place. But now we're super close to here. That is not looking good. So what we need to do is we need to bring this whole dance party thing down, and we want to make it so that there's equal space here as there is here. So I am going to select this entire middle section, and I am going to hold down Shift so it doesn't go all wonker all over the place, and I'm going to move it. Did you see that we have our smart guides there with the little green arrows indicating, okay, if you place it here, it's going to be equal distance between the top one and the bottom one. So that's great. So I'm liking this placement much better. One thing that's pissing me off though is this little space between this little space. So I think what we need to do is we need to make this one go up a little bit, move that up a little bit, and maybe we just take this whole thing and we move it down. Now I also want to maintain that same space there, there's in there, and I want to bring this all the way down to that bottom margin. So now what we're going to do at this point again is we're going to select this whole middle section. Since we moved this lower part down, I am going to hold down Shift, wait till I see those green arrows saying this is a good spot, and I'm going to let go. Okay, so now we have the equal spacing. Okay, great. So let's take a look at this now from a typography standpoint, from a standpoint of all the different elements of layout and composition. What do we have here? So we have 2 typefaces used here, right? Out of all of this, we still stuck with 2 typefaces. We have this sans serif, Proxima Nova in different fonts, right? We have the extra bold, we have the extra bold down here, all different variations. We have regular, and we have the bold, regular, extra bold, black, and bold. So we have these different variations of that typeface, but it keeps it unified because we're not using all sorts of different ones. It's all within the same typeface. And then we have this contrasting one that is the script typeface of Good Karma Smooth. And that just adds some extra flavor to the whole thing. Then we also have the consistency, the repetition of having the strokes. These strokes are the same. We have the outline on the dance party and the 21. We have the repetition in the typeface itself. We have the repetition in the different grays that we're using. We have balance with this balancing this bottom part. We have balance with the stars balancing the festival. We have alignment all down the centered. We have different white space around here. It's not kludged through the whole white space. It has some room to breathe. We have equal spacing in between elements. We have hierarchy, where the first thing they see will probably be the dance party festival because it's so big, and then they can see that they're invited to it and they can read the details. So that adds contrast because the dance party is so big that it really gets the attention, and then you have smaller elements below. So we have covered all the different points of the composition. We are applying the typography rules, and we have this finished Dance Party Festival flyer. So now it's your turn to go create the Dance Party Festival flyer, and then definitely share it in the Facebook group. We'd love to take a look. I'm sure others would love to see what you've created. And then after you've done that, go on to the next lesson where you are going to be creating a flyer for a market. So it's going to be a fun flyer. We're going to use some other elements of InDesign that you have never used before, and as well as working with typography. So I will see you there. In this lesson, you will be creating a morning market flyer, and we're still going to be just using black and white and gray, and you're going to be using typography and different shapes in gray and black. So you can go back to that InDesign document that you were working on before and just go to your pages. Remember, window, pages. I like to repeat the different points so that you always remember. Create new page. All right, so now the typefaces we're gonna need for this one, we're gonna go and get Glodoc. This is gonna be using a fancy type or a display type, and you want to activate that. And then you're also going to be getting Montserrat. So type in Montserrat and make sure you activate that one as well. So going back to our document, we are first going to be creating a shape because we are going to be typing on a curve. Now this is something that I have not taught you yet in InDesign. So I'm going to be zooming in. I'm going to go over here to our rectangle frame, go to the ellipse tool. I'm going to create this circle here. And what I'm going to be doing is dragging, making sure first of all this is in the center. I'm then going to drag down a guide to where these intersect. And what I'm going to be doing is creating an anchor point. So just like we did on the last example, we created anchor points so that we could delete part of the diamond shape. So we are going to be, while selecting the circle, hit your pen tool, hover over that circle, make a little anchor point, and make one there. Now we can go down to our circle and we can delete by hitting the A tool, selecting it, delete that anchor point, A tool, select it, delete that anchor point, A tool, select that, delete that anchor point. So now we're left with this path that we're going to be typing on. Now, one thing we need to do now is go to our type tool, hold down on that type tool over here, and it's going to pull up this little box, and you can do type on a path. So now we have type on a path here, and I'm going to hover over until that's that little plus sign, and then you can click on the type path and it will create it. Now this is a little funky because it's upside down. So what we need to do is go to our selection tool and we're going to hover over this until we see that little arrow with that little other arrow there. You see it? When you do that, you can flip the path of the type. So now it's above. So it's just that little, you're looking for that little arrow and it'll flip it up. So now we can go back to our T tool, just our normal type tool, click there, and we can type our word. So we're going to type morning. Now I'm going to do Command A. I'm going to center that, and I'm going to make the type 50. So that's a little bit big for this specific one. Let's just go there. Now I already have Glodoc loaded. That's the display type we're going to be using, and we're going to make it all caps. So right now I'm just going to make this at 30 point size so we can fit everything. And what we need to do, holding down Shift, you're going to get this little box here. You're going to make it bigger. So then we're going to drag this type. That's the start of the type. We're going to drag it all the way to this side. So when it's all the way to this side, then that will allow it to actually be centered in the middle. Now this looks like it's still a little bit, we want to make sure it's all the way at the corner. There we go. Now it's centered. And because it's all caps, I want to give it some tracking. So I'm going to select all of the type by doing just dragging with my type tool over it or doing Command A and then holding down my Option right arrow. I am going to put tracking in there. Great. So that's what I'm going to start with. Now what I'm going to be doing is I am going to add the word market down here. So I'm going to make a new type tool and I'm going to actually select this and I'm going to go here, going to copy that. So Command C, and then I'm going to do Command V, paste in there. And I'm going to type market. So I want them to be the same typeface, the same size to keep it consistent. Now it's lost some of its curve because the curve got so wide. So you can hold down Shift and then click on one of those boxes and it is not going to change the size of the type. It's just going to change the size of the shape or the path that you typed on, which makes the curve bigger. And then we can drag that, center it. And that's a better curve. See, we have a contrasted curve with this straight one here. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to add the up here. And because we learned about the way to add contrast with typefaces is use two different categories. So we're right now using a fancy typeface for this morning market. So we're going to use a sans serif to contrast. And I'm going to type the in there, select it, make it in the middle so that it's aligning with this. I'm going to make it all caps, and I'm going to make Montserrat. So because the morning market is really a bold, I'm going to do a medium Montserrat to add some extra contrast. I'm going to make the tracking bigger. Think about 200 tracking. And let's see how this looks space-wise here. Okay, so that's okay. I think that the is a little bit too small though. Let's make it 20 font size. The morning market. Now it's a little big. So let's do 15. Good. That looks about right. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to add a little line here just to add some visual contrast. I'm going to make a line. I'm going to make it at 1 point, and I want to have it the same width as this the. So let's go here and here. Great. So now it's the same width so that there's some repetition. Now the spacing is all wacko in between all these different elements, so we're going to use our rectangle tool, and I want about that much space in between the elements. So I'm going to move morning up till there. I'm going to bring that down, and I'm going to start from the end here where I put the box. I'm going to put the line there. Below the line, I'm going to move market up. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, now it looks like one whole cohesive element there. And now it's really teeny. If this is going to be the main focus of our flyer, I'm going to select all of it, and I'm going to go up here to my percentage where this is where I can scale it, and I'm going to do it at 130%, making it bigger. Still think that's a little small. Do one more 130%. Shift to drag it. Now I'm looking for my smart guide to tell me it's in the middle. There we go. And that's a much better size. Awesome. So now we need to add some other elements around it. And because we want to stick with two typefaces, we are going to be using Montserrat. So I'm going to do Command C, Command V. Now, the next thing we need to add is the data about where it's located and kind of give a little bit more information about this. So I'm going to select this and say, enjoy music while you shop. Okay, so that's obviously way too big because now it's competing for attention. So I'm going to do Command A, select it all, and I'm going to bring this down to half of that. So it'll be about 12. That's better. I also would like to make this a bold italic. So and the tracking can go down a little bit, 160. So now we have enjoy music while you shop. That's kind of like a little tagline. And then beneath that, we're going to put the name of the location. So what's the address? So just for fun, I'm going to say Cantaloupe Avenue, Valida, Washington. Okay, now I'm going to select that again because these need to be set apart from each other. And so I'm going to increase the leading by going over here. And I'm going to make this, instead of a bold italic, I'm going to skip over semi-bold. I'm going to go to medium. And I want to also make it smaller. Now, sometimes I've told you you want to make it 50% smaller, but that's not going to work for this. So I'm just going to make it to 9. Now the leading looks too much, so I'm going to make it at 18. Let's take a look here. Okay, so I can see this being a little tagline here. Now, I don't want to have it the same distance here because I feel that would be a little bit too tight. Like if we check that, I guess it could work. Let's leave it there for now. I'm going to make the next elements and then we can kind of see if we want to play with that spacing a bit. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is the date and the time. So for this, I am going to create a box, and I'm going to make the box the same width as this. So just for some consistency here, I'm going to bring it down there. I'm going to make it have a 1-inch stroke, except I know that this probably went up. Yeah, so now this is 1.6. I'm going to make it a 1.5 even. So I'm going to make this stroke 1.5. So remember your stroke panel. If you don't have it, window, stroke. Great. So I'm going to then Command C, Command V this type, so I can use that as a base. And I want to make it the same 12-point type for the date. So let's see if that's going to work okay. So September 15. I'm going to put 2 spaces, a dividing line, which I just sometimes use an I for, 2 spaces, 6 to 11 a.m. Okay, I'm going to select this other stuff, get rid of it, delete, select all of that. I do not want it to be bold. I think I want it to be semi-bold or even a medium so that it's consistent with that one. Okay, good. Now I want it to be over here, but I also want to add a little like symbol. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to select this rectangle. I'm going to do Command C, Command V, and I'm going to make it into an actual square. So you see over here, this tells me how high it is and how wide it is. So I want to copy the height, and I'm going to paste it by Command C and then Command V, and this is going to make it into a square. I'm going to put that square directly over the rectangle. I can select them both and go up to here to our align vertical centers, make sure it's aligned. Great. Now I'm going to take this little date and time here. I'm going to center it within just like that. And selecting all of them, making sure aligned and vertical. Great, so they are aligned vertically. Now I want to add, because this is morning, I want to add a little sun there, just for a fun design element. So how do we create a sun illustration in InDesign? Good question. We go over to our rectangle frame tool, we go down to polygon frame tool, and we have that little guy there that we're gonna click, and we're gonna make it 0.5 inches on both, so it's not stretched, it's proportionate. And I'm gonna make it 12 sides with a 50% inset. Let's see what we got here. So remember, we need to now go to swatches, click on the fill instead of the stroke, hit black. Oh, look at that, we created a little sun. Okay, so let's see, we're probably gonna have to scale him down. So I'm gonna bring him over here, holding down Shift. I am going to scale him. And I think I wanna make him a little bit smaller. And there we go. So now we have our sun, we have the date. Let's just make sure. Good. Okay. So now another element we need to add in here is a presented by. So who this whole market is presented by. So I'm going to have this be the same look, the same font and everything as this address. So I'm going to do Command C, Command V. We're going to bring it down here. I'm going to get rid of that enjoy music, and I'm going to say presented by Ella Rose Community Outreach. And I want to make the type go a little bit longer, to you. So I'm just going to add to you. And remember, you can do Command Option C. It'll make that bounding box all closed. I want to drag it down to the bottom of the margin. Now we're going to do Command 0. Take a look. Okay, so it's definitely coming together. I feel like we need some other element up here. And I don't want to really put more type. I'd rather use a rectangular element. So I'm going to take this rectangle, Command C, Command V, so that we're repeating elements. And I'm going to hold down Shift to keep it proportionate, and I'm going to drag it like that. So now I would like to fill it with black. I'm going to get rid of the stroke. Okay, so that definitely looks like a nice contrast there. It kind of anchors the whole design. Now, I feel like the morning market section is a little bit small. I'm thinking I want to try and make it a tiny bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the morning market, and I'm going to make it 115% bigger. So let's center that. Okay, so I think that looks a bit bigger. Or a bit better. I am going to now move that guy down. Let's see here. So that's still the same space in between. If I were to move this here, let's see what it looks like. A little unbalanced. I'm going to move it up there. So now there's equal space between here and here. And let's see if we can get the same space to be between here and here. So I'm going to move it up a little bit. Oh, this one is not the same. So I'm going to just change the leading on this a little bit, decrease it. Okay, so what we probably need to do is move all of this up a little bit. It's down. Okay. We can move that one up a little bit. Move this here. Okay, so now this space is equal to this space, which is equal to this space. And you can tell it has a clean, consistent look to it, which is definitely what we're going for. Okay, so now I wanted to try one more thing, which is just a test. I want to see if I were to make this type white, and I were to make this little dude white, and then make these guys black, and actually then we're going to make the strokes, whoopsies, we're going to make the strokes white. What do we think about that? Just going to copy that. I'm going to go back to where we were. I like the original better. So we're going to stick with that one. So now what we learned here is that how you can type on a path. We learned about putting the display type or the fancy type with a sans serif typeface, which helps add contrast. We still only stuck to 2 typefaces in this whole design, which is great. We are learning about, we did the spacing, right? We have white space around it. We have contrast with these big words and contrasted with the smaller ones. This is clearly the first point you want people to look at, the hierarchy. So they read this whole communication, they see the date, they see who it's presented by. It's all aligned in the center because there's not a lot of type to read. And it's balanced with this black up here, the rectangle similar to here. These balance each other. This is balanced with this, and it's all balanced with this lower type down here. And there's repetition with the different parts, like the line strokes here are the same. The black is also repeated, and it has a pretty cohesive look. There's good contrast between the big type and the smaller type, the bold with the less bold. I think this one is a medium with the bold. So we got all of our bases covered here on the different fundamentals and the different typography points to apply. So now it's your turn to go and create your own morning market flyer, and then definitely share it in the group. Love to see your creation. And then you're going to go on to the next lesson where it's not really a lesson. It's going to be you. I'm going to give you a brief of what you're going to go design, and then you're going to do it yourself.